A dismal defeat to Huddersfield and Chris Wood leaving to Newcastle. It's all doom and gloom for the Clarets. Is there any positives on the horizon? This is the No Nay Never podcast. So, hello and welcome to this evening's No Nay Never podcast. I'm hosting tonight because Natalie is occupied with work-related issues. We've got George Poole and Adam Dennett with us tonight. George, how are you, mate?
Like a balloon that's just been popped. I'm absolutely shell-shocked.
George is shell-shocked. Adam, how are you, mate?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think pivotal few days ahead.
Yeah, of course. So
quick.
Yeah, definitely. So we planned this podcast. I wrote out the script yesterday evening with all I had out to say. That's kind of been thrown out the window, really. And obviously, you know, we're recording this at 7 o'clock on Tuesday evening. As of about 6:30, we got the news was released that Chris Wood is indeed off to Newcastle. It seemed like the rumours come at the weekend and then they were squashed by our local journalists, and now obviously it's kind of come back in full force. And Adam was a little bit late to the podcast, so me and George have been chewing the fat a little bit off her, and yeah, we're both a little bit shocked, really. So we're going to obviously get the thoughts of George and Adam, but it seems a really, really pivotal moment. I'm not going to go as far as saying a pivotal moment in the history of Burnley Football Club, but a really, really huge moment in the recent history anyway. George, I'll come to you first. Just, you've mentioned your shell shot. Just give us a little bit of your initial reaction, obviously, because it's very raw, the news.
Well, you just broke it to me about 20 minutes ago, Rich, and I thought you were joking at first, and then it started to seep in, and I just can't believe that the best striker we've ever had in the Premier League statistically, and also that our only striker, if you don't count Cornet as an out-and-out striker, our only striker who actually scores Premier League goals, and we're selling him not only to a relegation rival, but as we're going to go on to discuss, for a fee that is just absolutely unbelievably low and won't offer us any room for manoeuvre in terms of replacing him. And I think we're just seeing the final nail being banged thoroughly into the four corners of our coffin.
Yeah, so I don't quite agree with that, George. But I'll kind of leave that for shortly. So, Adam, just saying question to you. What's your views on it then? Because it's such momentous news.
I think he's always he's split opinion on it the last couple of years, because he does have real dips in form and then goes on a glut and will gain you a load of points in a month that you're not expecting. But at the end of the day, a 1 in 3 striker in the Premier League is absolutely priceless for a team like Burnley. And even I was thinking we were going to come on here discussing his form and whether what we needed to do to get the best out of him, or whether what the options were, whether we needed to bring another striker in for competition, or even to give him a bit of a kick up the backside. But yeah, this news has really rocked me. I'm one of his big backers. I think you've got to have a player like that in your starting lineup, even when he's in his poor run of form, because you just don't know when he's going to turn it on. And it's massive that we've put ourselves in a position that Newcastle can come and do this to us. And like George says, 20 million, if that is correct, is just not anywhere near enough for. It's worth way more for to Burnley than that, and we're going to really struggle to replace him in the next couple of weeks. Clubs are going to really have our pants down, knowing that we've just got 20 million. We should have more money to spend, and that we are absolutely desperate for a striker. And what does it say to players who are going to be coming in as well? Why would a player who's at the top end of the Championship want to come and risk playing for us? We've looked very poor for a lot of the season anyway. We're not creating chances. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts. Pretty similar to George. Bit of a shock.
Yeah, I can see by your face when you're talking, Ad, talk really well then with a lot of passion. Yeah, you're right. Wood's polarised a lot of opinion. I'm going to bring some other stats up shortly. We mentioned we don't know how 100% true it is. Sky have reported that. Sky have got feed. It's only the only report of a fee I've seen is from Sky. I've asked George and Adam to try and keep me up to date. Tonight, because I can't really be looking elsewhere. But George, 20 million. If that is true, one thing I was saying is if we sell Wood at his age and if we get a good fee around 30 million, I can live with it. But 20 million, it's not enough, is it, mate? Unfortunately,
it's absolutely excuse me. It's absolutely scandalous, and it's the previous board coming back to bite us in the bum one last time. I think Borden tweeted the other day when it was told never in a million years that happening. He tweeted that this contract was signed in November of 2019. So that's just over 2 years after we signed for 15 million. November 2019, so he'd be about 28 then. And he'd scored 28 goals in 53 games for a pretty average side known as Burnley in the Premier League. So that's 1 in 2 games practically for Burnley. And we have a release clause that's only 5 million more than we bought him for. I just think that's absolutely balmy. And the worst thing is, as Adam referred to earlier, it's not what I, as Newcastle United, would pay for Chris Wood. It's about what Chris Wood is worth to Burnley. And the fact is that Wood has now, as of this moment, scored 49 goals in 144 games for us. Now, that's with a rubbish season this year thrown in. That's 1 in 3 games. So you got a striker now who's scoring 1 in every 3 games in the Premier League and has scored 10 or more goals every full season he's played for us, including his goals keeping us up last season. On top of that, you've got 27 goals in 60 games for New Zealand, so he's a 1 in 2 striker at international level. Then you've got for Leeds United, 41 goals in 83 games, 1 in 2 games for Leeds. And we're not thinking about it. We are obviously selling him for 20 million. I think the word around that I'm seeing on Twitter is that Burnley obviously didn't want to sell him. And there's no surprise because other than Wood, the only striker apart from Vidra who scored this season apart from Cornet, who scored this season is Vidra. And he scored 1 goal all season and it's January. So I just think we're not going to be able to replace Wood with a striker who's going to keep us up for 20 million. I'm absolutely baffled. Like me and Rich, full well, Rich, we were talking before we recorded here, and we said if it's 30 million, it is what it is. It's a decent enough release clause. Newcastle are clearly willing to pay whatever they want, but 20, it's absolutely criminal. I'm absolutely blown away.
Yeah, again, really good, George. You've got some great stats in there. Obviously, his record for New Zealand, no offence, George, I'm not going to really take much notice of it when he's playing against the Solomon Islands and stuff like that. But obviously, 1 in 3 in the Premier League, and as how frustrating Wood can be, and sometimes he's not easy on the eye for a club like us who, notoriously, I can't imagine we hit 40 goals that regularly in a Premier League season. So, to average 10 goals a season, it is a quarter of your goals, and it is a lot to take out. You mentioned 20 million there. I've seen another report tonight. Yeah, that it will go, for that money. Yeah, it's just really difficult. Like, honestly, anybody listening tonight, I'm covering for Natalie. I had a whole script written. It's going to be dead professional. I've not a clue what to say now almost, and when I'm doing it. Adam, I'll just come to you again. George mentioned a really good point about he may go to Newcastle and he might not actually do that well. He might get another 3 goals in the second half of the season. I think he's missing 2 or 3 games when he goes playing for New Zealand too. In my opinion, when Wilson comes back in, probably at the end of February, he's going to be on the bench. I might be wrong. If he's playing well, he might play 2 up front. But for me, Wilson is a better striker than Wood. Do you think it's more the impact of them, how it actually damages us rather than how it actually benefits Newcastle?
Yeah, it seems a no-brainer for them. Weaken one of the main relegation rivals and bring in a good option for when Callum Wilson's out. It's proven at this level. I think Newcastle will create naturally create more chances than we do, and we just got that horrible thing to look forward to: Trippier crossing a ball in and Wood nodding one into the corner of the net. But like players like Sam Maximan, Almiron, and even Joe Linton recently, it's quality going forward that we've not got. Looking at Jamie's post on the No Nay Never newsletter before, and saying that his shots per game this season are pretty similar, but the XG are a lot less than previous seasons. So he's just not getting the quality of chances. If he gets the quality of chances, I think you'd want him any bottom 10 side. I can't think of another striker probably other than Wilson actually that you'd want on the end of it. So it won't surprise me if he goes there and gets on one of his runs. So it's no brainer for them. Hammer blow for us.
Just some stats here. In Premier League games, he started all 17 games that we played this season. He's averaged 81 minutes per game, so he's practically played the majority. He's got 3 goals. He's got a scoring frequency of a goal per 459 minutes, 0.2 goals per game. He's missed 6 big chances this season. He's got 0 assists. He's not created a big chance. He's had a passing accuracy of 59%, 54% in his own half where he's given the ball away, and he's only won 50% of headed duels, which is supposed to apparently be a strength of his game, even though he's not brilliant, I would say at that. So you're looking at I know, George, you're going to say something. I'm just trying to bring a bit of perspective to say how actually poor he's been this season. And there's no touches on, and there's no stats here that's on first touches, but which again is something that's let him down. So, going George, I've read a load of stats out there. I presume you're going to actually lay into my stats. That's courtesy of SofaScore, by the way. I've not just made them up.
Courtesy of the steelstats.com, is it that? I trust you. I trust you. And I'm not gonna deny the stats at all. I'm just gonna say one thing. Find me a bottom 10 striker who scores consistently in the Premier League who hasn't had a bad season in their career, because it happens. Strikers have bad seasons sometimes. But
he was poor he was very poor probably until the last 10 games of last season too, George. In fairness.
But you've got to take it as a whole, and his goals at the end of last season kept us up.
Yeah, of course.
And he's the only striker who's scored consistently for us in the Premier League since Danny Ings, really. Yeah, since Danny Ings. Barnes had a couple of seasons where he scored over 10 goals, so maybe Ashley Barnes deserves a bit more credit there. But at the end of the day, we now, right at this moment, if Wood goes, we have a squad with. We're not counting Cornet as an out-and-out striker for the time being, just because I don't think that's fair, because he's a left-back turned. We play him wherever he wants because he's that good. Without him, we could play him in net. Yeah, exactly. Without Cornet involved, we now have a squad with no striker that is scoring Premier League goals. Now, not only do we need at least one striker, you need a team with 1, 2, or 3 strikers who are scoring Premier League goals to stay up. And now we've willingly in that we set a ridiculous release clause a few years ago under Mike Garlick's tenure, we are now willingly giving a 10-plus goal a season striker to a relegation rival whilst we have none. And I think that is just, that's all you need to say, whether he's had a bad season or not. That's all for me. That's all that's ringing in my head, because I'm just thinking right now, where on earth do we go from here? Where do we go?
Yeah, I'm just going to bring some more in. You mentioned about bottom half players. So I'll give you clubs that's on what I class as a similar level to us. You've got Emmanuel Dennis. Where's he gone? 8 goals, 5 assists. So that's 13 goal contributions. Leeds, who are down there. I know Rafinha's a bit of a different level. He's got 9 goals, 8 goals. Mope's got 7. Conor Gallagher's even got 6. Callum Wilson 6. Edward 5, Josh King 5, Damari Gray 5, Timu Pukki 5, Ismail Assar 5 goals, St. Maximin's even got 4. So I know I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I'm just to you said before, George, that there's nobody else in the bottom half who would do what Wood does. So
no, sorry, my point was find me playing the bottom half who in their career hasn't had a bad season.
Okay.
Accepting Wood's had a bad season. That's my thing. I am accepting that. But it's just not the time where we can afford to let him go. I think
I would argue there's been a little bit longer. I felt he was average for long parts of last season too. Go on, Adam. I know you was bursting to say something as well then.
No, I'm just going to say that those players you just listed then, none of them will have as many Premier League goals over the last 4 seasons as Wood.
Yes.
And yeah, you've got form's a big thing, but the whole team's been off it, not just Wood. So I think it's a fair point. He's not on form, and I think his stats were pretty similar the first half of last season, like you said, before he went on a run. But it's just a really difficult situation to take.
Yeah, the last one for me on this before we kind of move on to another topic. Well, I suppose it is kind of linked to the same topic. We're going to talk about I've got a lot of my frustration is for this predicament we're in is Mike Garlick, and he's struck again. It seems I seen someone claim on Twitter Mike Garlick should go down as a Clarets legend, which I thought was I don't agree with that statement. I'll put it lightly. Again, people can have their own views, and they're entitled to that. Something that we've been doing recently is we've been signing players for money. Hendrik Brady has gone on a free. We've been losing. Tarkowski's going to go on a free transfer. We can't, as a business model, and especially under the current regime, we can't keep signing players for big money and letting them go as a free. We've got a 30-year-old who's been out of form, in my opinion, for 18 months now, has not been at his best as what I've seen before. And it's not as much as I want, but at the same time, where do we go now? We can't keep letting players go into the 30s and leaving for nothing. So that's another end to the coin, side to it. George has just put on our chat, and I'll let you answer it. What does this transfer say to the rest of our squad? They must be crippled. They're being left without life rats. The owner need to make. Yeah, of course. All right, George. I'm going to come back to that statement later. Okay, with something else I'm going to mention. Okay, so I'm going to come on to Mike Garlick shortly. Incoming transfers. This was something I was going to talk about anyway. Before this podcast, I think every single Burnley fan agreed and knows the midfield is the main area. Okay, but we'll stick with Wood for now. So Adam, I'll come to you. Where do we go now? I know it's going to be difficult, but where do we go now with transfers?
I think the obvious target's Lyndon Dykes from QPR, just because it's very similar sort of player, maybe slightly more mobile, looks energetic, on good form, and obviously not proven at Premier League level, so it'd be a risk, but I don't think we're going to be able to get someone with a proven record in January, especially from any teams around us. The other way to go is, looking at, you'd want to bring a permanent signing, but someone like Eddie Nketiah from Arsenal, I don't think they'd want to let him go to Burnley because of the style and all that, but it's really difficult to try and pick out where we're going to get it from, but I think it'd be Championship or high level Premier League loan of a younger player. So neither of them are ideal.
George, your view?
Oh, it's so demoralising, isn't it? The fact that we're talking about desperate signings like Nketiah on loan, a loan signing of a young lad who's never really done anything apart from in cup games. And we're talking about Lyndon Dykes, who's just looking now, 26 years old, has scored 17 in 53 games for QPR. This so-called, purple patch this season, he's only scored 6 championship goals. And now I'm looking up the top scorers list in the championship, and let's just list the top 5. Mitrovic, bang average, Prem striker. I don't think he'd turn it round, and whether he'd come to us, no idea. Ben Brereton Diaz, an absolute dream of a signing to cripple Rovers, but not one that's going to happen in a million years. Dominic Solanke, a failed Premier League striker. Andreas Weimann from Bristol City, just in his 30s, seeing out his career, same as Lewis Grabban. And I'm looking around and I'm hopeless. Not only did we already need a striker just to take the burden off Wood, and because every striker, arguably apart from Wood, is past their best. Some may say Wood was past his best, but I'm saying categorically every other striker is past their best. We already needed to sign someone, and now we need to fill 2 strikers with 20 million apparently, and they need to be the quality to keep us up, and that's not even touching on the midfield. I just think that's my big issue is, we got too many. We had too many holes in this Titanic before because of the icebergs, and the iceberg is the old administration. And now we've willingly punctured another one. That's what I'm visualizing right now.
For me, I agree with none of them names you've mentioned. I quite like Nketiah actually. I think he's a good player, but is he our type of player? Really, I'm not sure. I quite like Tyrese Campbell from Stoke, but he's still a young lad who's kind of been injured for a long time, who in my opinion, I think will be a Premier League player. But again, that would be a gamble. I think we've got to look abroad and try and get a signing in a similar mold to Cornet. I think that's my only option for it. Maybe we can use the money to maybe get someone like Barkley, and who, let's be honest, I know he's had his indiscretions, but he's a top player. So it's this coming out tonight. Obviously, everyone's on here, pretty depressed. It's the next, we've got just over 2 weeks left, nearly 3 weeks, 20 days till January the 31st, and proof will be in the pudding. Then, we have to in the next week. Yeah, we've got, this is the issue, isn't it? As well, we've got 2 massive games coming up, season-defining games. I'll come to you, Adam. I mentioned his name before, Mike Garlick. He sold the club. He kind of got forgotten about when we stayed up last year. Now we're in this position. I've seen a couple of people mention Alan Pace. I don't know what Alan Pace is meant to do in this situation. And, and this isn't defending Alan Pace, by the way. I'm still, I can't trust somebody who reminds me of Ted Lasso too much, to be honest. If you've watched that, you'll understand what I mean. But it come for me, Mike, he signed that contract 18 months ago with a 20 million release clause, or whatever it is, around 20 million. To me, that is absolutely criminal.
Yeah, it's I think the that summer of 2020 when we just brought Dale Stephens in, those were real alarm bells.
He's your best mate. You said he was going to pull us out of all this mess. Just get Dale in.
I was clutching at straws last week, weren't I? Even worse now. I can't even clutch at that straw. But yeah, no. that were real alarm bells then. And you knew that they were only going one way in terms of selling the club. But even the summer transfer window before, when it were Aaron Lennon, Eric Peters, Phil Bardsley a year before that. But we've been signing players that haven't been improving the side and aren't going to get any better. And like you mentioned, Hendrick and Brady, but they both came in 16-17 season. And then with the European season where we actually spent some money, but it were like Vidra, Gibson, Hart, 40 million of just nothing.
Yeah, and apparently Dyke didn't really want Vidra. That's what I've heard as well.
No.
So
right, you've kind of seen that over the last few years, haven't you? Where he doesn't seem to get as much of a run as other players if they're not on form. But it's difficult one with Pace because I'd actually rate our summer transfer business as decent.
Yeah.
Bringing in Connor Roberts at the time, obviously you can't foresee the injuries that he's had and the illness that he'd had. Seemed a really good sign on the face and would improve us over the next 2, 3, 4 years. Cornet, obviously, absolute magnificent signing, and Colin's going to improve us going forward. But it's that last 2 or 3 years that have just killed us, and it's. I think I read an article earlier. It said Burnley sleepwalking towards relegation. The things that we were strong at doing a couple of years ago, we're not anymore. We concede just as many goals from set pieces as we score now. We're not outrunning teams. We're not outworking teams. we've been worked out in a sense, but we're just paying the price for long-term lack of investment, stand still, go backwards.
Yeah, George, your views on the previous administration. Obviously, you said there it's like a ship that's sinking.
Yeah, it's tricky ground, this one, because I mean you only have to type in at George Puddle on Twitter and put in the words garlic, and there'll be plenty of tweets from me praising him. You know, I think at the time he left the club, I was firmly thinking, you know, what a good job he's done. I do think, you know, he did a good job for a certain period. Like, obviously he settled the ship. I mean, Kilby had already done that, let's be honest. But you know, he'd overseen Daesh coming in, and you know, we had a really good sort of spell. Despite going down, we invested again and we went back up. But it's very clear, with the power of hindsight, admittedly, it's very clear to see in the last 2 or 3 years of his administration, we were sleepwalking completely, relying entirely on Daesh's really good management work to pull us out of holes. And it's just like a neglected club the last 3 years. It's at the Reign. I said this earlier on, speaking to somebody at the time that Garlick handed over the reins to Pace, the start of 2021. If you don't count Brownhill because he's not forced his way into the side, the last improvement we made to the first team was the summer of 2017 when we signed Chris Wood and Charlie Taylor. So between the summer of 2017 and January 2021, we hadn't made an improvement to the first team. And I think in the middle of that, you have the 2018 window in the summer when we just qualified for Europe, our best position in 51 years to attract players. And we were limited by the old administration to pretty much signing only English talent from the lower leagues, because they didn't want to, air quotes, waste their money on talent from abroad that might not pay off. Well, Guess what? Ben Gibson didn't pay off, and Vidra didn't really pay off. He's a decent squad player, but he just can't finish his dinner. He can't finish his dinner, you know. And so the issue is, as Adam says, we've left this squad to stagnate for years, and we've gone from a side that was 10 times the team that West Ham were in 2018, when we made them look like right muppets at the Olympic Stadium, and go forward 3 or 4 years and the squads are completely reversed. We've got the same squad West Ham have kicked on. That's just a perfect example for me in my head to say we've stood still and we've paid the price. And it's so frustrating.
I agree with you there, George. I think, again, I was speaking to a pal of mine, and he was saying, like, I think Adam made a great point, and I think we had a good, summer transfer window. I think we signed 3 players who I think Roberts will be a very good signing for us. Obviously, Cornet, without saying. Collins, for me, is going to be better than both me and Tarkowski in the future. I think he's going to be a real top, in my opinion, a top Premier League player. I think he's got everything to his game. If from that kind of Europe season, if we'd done that type of recruitment, getting younger players in who could improve, signing 3 players at, a summer window, maybe adding 1 or 2 in January, I genuinely think we'd be a mid-table club. And it's sad to see how much we've regressed in the last 18 months. Again, as we're doing this podcast more, and, somebody's just sent me something from David Anderson, who's a pretty reliable reporter at The Mirror. He initially brought the Ashley Young news, just so a little bit of context about him being interested in Burnley and then actually having the U-turn and go to Villa to kind of prove he's not a numpty. He's put Chris Wood does have an escape clause in his Burnley contract, but it only applies in the summer. Chairman Alan Pace has sanctioned this deal, which is worth around 20 million. Will be interesting to see if Sean Dyche is given all this cash to spend this month. Adam, I will come to you with that quote, because that has actually, George, I'm going to let you have a minute to think about it before you just explode. Your face is going redder and redder and redder as by the second. So, Adam, I'll come to you first.
Well, that's astounding, really. Unless they've got something already lined up, which you normally hear mutterings about. If not, you know about it already. Like this Wood news breaking a few days ago. Like you do hear murmurings before transfers go through. Then it just seems like we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. I'm sure we'll hear more and more. Like I said, it only broke an hour ago and it's changing all the time, innit? But that just sounds ridiculous.
Go on. Go on, George.
You ready?
I'm blown away, Rich. I'm absolutely blown away. I mean, let's let's add the this might not be true. Fair enough if it's not true. But if that is true, in the world of if, buts, and maybes, if your auntie had wheels and all that, that'd be absolutely criminal from Pearce. And we've just spent the last 10 minutes talking about Garlick and the previous administration. And I think there's definite criticisms to be had there. But if this is the case, then this is really poor, because I think every man and his dog can see Sean Dyche likes Chris Wood as a footballer. Sean Dyche has played Chris Wood for the last 4 seasons, and Chris Wood has repaid that faith and delivered, like we said, irrefutably delivered, stats-wise, goals for this team. So I think it's just a mentality thing for me as well. I think the rest of the squad and Dyche, looking at this, what are they going to think? They're already in a low place because we're struggling this season. We need everything. We need everyone pointing in the right direction. And on the eve of possibly the biggest week of our season, where we're playing Leicester and Watford, and we pretty much have to get points on the board before the next round of really tough games coming up. And on the eve of that week, we're selling our best striker, without a doubt. We're selling our best striker to a relegation rival for only 5 million more than we signed him a few years ago. And since that moment, he's been a 10+ goal a season striker in the Premier League, and we're making 5 million profit in January. Oh, that's baffling to me. I really hope it's not true that the release clause is only in force in the summer. But I'm just really worried about the mentality, the effect this has on the morale of the squad, because realistically, they're being left high and dry here. Unless a signing comes in the next few days, on the eve of the 2 biggest games of the season, they've been robbed of one of their teammates and one of the best players. That just seems a bit tricky to me.
Yeah, it's this again. There's certain journalists you see that you think that's nonsense, and you others you see and you think, yeah, they're pretty reliable. And this David Anderson, from again what I've come across, does seem reliable. Adam, I'll come to you for this one. This is where there's 2 sides of it with this. What's been said about Alan Pace. I can't imagine this deal, such a big deal, being sanctioned without Dyche okaying it. That's my view on it. If Dyche hasn't okayed this, then there's absolute murders to pay. If Dyche has sanctioned it, that's really interesting, because I know recently there has been rumours of Dyche and Wood having little fallouts and little things going on. He got took off at Wolves, and there's a public display of frustration from Wood, and he's been taken off more and more in games recently. He did it at Leeds where he wasn't happy. So
yeah, he's already been subbed more times this season than he was throughout all the last season.
Well, there you go. I think that's quite a damning statistic.
12 to 11.
Oh, I see.
It is at this stage when we're not even halfway through.
Burnley's tweeted 29 seconds ago. Sorry, Adam, saying enjoyed Westie's winner against the Foxes. Great time in that, innit? From the social media guys.
Yeah, God.
Sorry, you're that. Just repeat that.
No, just he's been sub more times this season already than throughout all last season, which says a lot. So yeah, there's clearly a bit of tension between him and Dyche. And like you said, I'd be shocked if Dyche didn't have some say. If it's not a release clause, wait to see if the truth does what truth does come out. But if we've made that decision, he's got to be involved. I don't think he'd have signed his new contract under the proviso of not having the same sort of control as he did previously, especially around transfers. Obviously, I know it's been talked about that Pace was the driver behind Cornet coming in, but yeah, shocking if that's the case. Unless he's got a plan.
Yeah, go on, George. You said you had a little bit of new info.
Yeah, so just finally, before we move on to the next bit of the podcast, just obviously
to be honest, my whole plan's gone. I like.
We'll figure it out, Rich. We'll come back stronger in the second half of the season, just like we will in real life. But just obviously, listeners, we're really reacting to this as it all breaks live. We've just said maybe there isn't a release clause in January. I'm just seeing on Twitter now, Craig Hope of the Daily Mail. God, I'm really sorry I had to say that name. I'm going to wash my mouth out later. But Craig Hope, in the North East correspondent, he's put to update. I'm told Chris Wood's release clause is 25 million, which for me is still, ridiculously too low. But the really interesting bit for me, the last thing he said is Burnley are furious in losing him to Newcastle. And I think that's just what I was touched on a few minutes ago. They must be, I think the squad and the manager must be absolutely on the floor right now. I'm really worried about that in this big week for us.
So 25 million, so it's more than 20. So has he got a release clause now? Has he not got a release clause? It's who knows at the moment. Okay. So yeah, really interesting times with the Clarets. What I'm going to do next is, because I've got Twitter open. I'm not going to say people's names because they might not want to be mentioned, but I'm just going to read out some of the reactions because there's been some really good tweets tonight. So, as we said, I get some social media reaction. Chris Borden tweeted a few minutes ago, still nothing from this end, but suggestion from the North East is of a release clause of 20 to 25 million. Reports that clause wasn't in play into the summer, but can't see Burnley or Sean Dicey selling to Salford at free to a relegation rival. So I think what people just want from Burnley is a little bit of clarity, as much as anything, for the situation. Like I said, I'm just going to read some tweets out, just from people, like just in general, because I can just go through quite a few of them. I'm not going to read people's names, just so you just get a little bit of a flavour of kind of the type of stuff that people are putting. Someone's put, fancy a kickabout to Peter Crouch, 3 p.m. at Turf Moor. Not having that Wood has gone for 22 million. We paid 15 million in 2017 and he's had double figures in every PL season. 30 million plus, surely. You don't pay 50 million for someone and put a 22 million release clause in unless you've already been relegated. So that seems to be some of the common themes. And try and go around to find another one. Can't believe people are questioning why Wood is off to Newcastle with the amount of stick he received from our own fans. I'm sure Cornet taking the glory hasn't helped, but Wood is very underestimated, especially with the lack of service. So, yeah, that's another one. Possibly I don't necessarily agree with Cornet taking the glory, but yeah, he's probably not been the most loved in his time. I know I've kind of had my frustrations with Wood. Tell you what, it's Andy Carroll, an essential loan replacement with a picture of Alan Partridge, which is a one that I quite liked. We'll at least get a Huddersfield pub crawl before our away game the next season. But then I seen another one which was kind of from like a bit of a different standpoint of it, really. I find it hard not to resent a player who has moaned his way through the last few months before leaving us for a relegation rival. However, if we can find a suitable hungry replacement ASAP for Wood, I don't think it's the end. When was the last time he played well for us? I think the key is in that second sentence is, however, if you can find a suitable hungry replacement, which won't be easy. He has done a lot of moaning, as we mentioned before, the last few months. And, Adam made a great start, better than any of my stats about how he's been sub more this season than he has done in any other season. I thought that was a really good point to made. And then George has just tweeted on the podcast. It's a nice picture of me. Cheers, George. So, well, I'll read out what Tom's put, our resident Tom, the voice of all reason. That's an absolute hammer blow with Wood. Be interesting to see how it's happened, but the message it sends to everyone is that we're accepting relegation. So big words for Tom. Robbie Blake's just tweeted, I hear Chris Wood is going to Newcastle. Still time to brush the dust off the old boots if needed at Burnley official. So obviously, I'd say 99% of Twitter responses is not good. Chris Bourne's just tweeted again, can't imagine the club would willingly sell, though, when only have Barnes still ahead of the curve, but only a few weeks away. Vidra had COVID last week and has a groin and hernia problem, which requires surgery at some point. And then he's just put and J-Rod and especially Cornet's leaving. So, yeah, there's a lot of negative reaction. It'd be interesting to see if it does change. What do we think of those views then, George? I'll come to you. Obviously, does it reflect your thoughts and your feelings on it all?
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those nights after Saturday was the same after the loss to Huddersfield, which we very smartly moved quickly on from. It's one of those nights where you try and stay off Twitter
which
because
I didn't.
all it's going to do is make you feel very sad. And it's actually been good that we've been doing the podcast while this has all been exploding around us. Yeah, it's
It's been
really
exciting though,
unfortunate.
hasn't it? It's been quite exciting. I feel like Jim White tonight. We should have had my yellow tie on. It's been exciting though.
I wish you could all see the face I just gave to Rich because it wasn't excitement. It was absolute, it was sadness. It was misery. But no, realistically, I think what you were about to say to me then, Rich, was, does it change? I think maybe what we do going forward in a transfer window, and we touched on it earlier. Obviously, this next week is massive now because we need to. The thing is, it's really tough for us to provide a really well balanced view tonight on the pod because we don't know what they've got lined up and what the plans are for this window. Because I think we can all probably agree here that if the squad stays as is, we've got no chance.
We
No
was down
chance.
anyway, wasn't we, George? If Wood stayed or not with the squad
Yeah,
as it was.
yeah, exactly as you said before. If Wood has stayed or not, we're struggling with the squad we have now. We're really struggling. But it's just another chink in the armor, another thing we really didn't need, and it's made for a good podcast, though.
Yeah. Adam, I've just seen another tweet which I think's pretty good, and it's got quite a bit of traction and quite a lot of people commented on it saying, yeah, fair enough. I tell you what, I personally think it's the right time to move Wood on. 20, if what's reported of 25 million, which is the newest report for a 30-year-old who's been par this season, isn't bad business at all. But we should never forget all that Wood has done for us. I don't think you quite echo those comments, but I thought it was a pretty good balanced tweet.
Yeah, and in terms of leaving for a relegation right halfway through the season, you've got to put yourself in his shoes, though. Like, as Chris Wood, he's done everything he can for Burnley. It's not going to get better for him at Burnley. Why would you? There's no way he's ever turned down that move, given the option. With everything that's going on at Newcastle and the money, he's got a better chance of being in the Premier League next season with Newcastle than with Burnley. It gets him one last big move, one last big payday. I think we'd all do the same. But I think you've touched on it already, George. I'm just looking this Saturday and then next Tuesday. We're not going to do any business before then, are we, realistically? Or bringing in someone who will make an instant impact. Dyche, it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get a player in a team anyway. But after that, Arsenal, United, Liverpool, Brighton away, Palace away, Chelsea at home. It's pretty. No matter what happens, what the players we've got now, we've got to do something in these 2 games regardless. And I just don't know if they've got it in them, especially after this hammer blow. So sorry to completely bring it down on it, but just don't look good.
Is this part of it? I know it's sad to say that we're in a difficult situation anyway. We might have to start planning for the future. We need to lower our average age of the squad down. This is the thing, isn't it? It's very doom and gloom at the moment. January the 31st might look very different. Someone's just tweeted me back, saying, I'll let you know January 31st because I asked him what Jamaica, the pacemaker. It's this for me. This next 20 days will define Alan Pace's reign. We may go down. That's part of football. We would have gone down anyway. I think we will sign someone, but if we sign average players and we don't have a real good go with it, people won't forgive Pace for this, especially if that about the release clause is true, about only letting him go in the summer. But if we now have a good go, because we didn't have much money to spend, we get a few players in of good quality, it can almost make his reign. I really think now, because he's had 12 months, he's done some good things. There's a lot of information he said about this leverage buyout and this debt, which to me in his replies, he's been very wishy-washy. And he's just said, well, I'm doing it a different way. See what we're doing in 5 years' time, etc., etc. Which worries me. That, I can't lie about that. If we go down and we have a few seasons in the Championship and we don't go back up, that worries me greatly. Where's this money going to come to pay off this interest and the debt? So for me, these next 20 days are absolutely crucial. But we've got 2 massive games coming in. George wrote in our chat just before. Oh, it's gone off now, George. You wrote a really good message, but it was basically along the lines of what are the players going to think now? What are the managers going to think? You know, they're already struggling. They've basically been asked to row a raft without oars or something like that. What did you put, George? Tell me what you put. I've got the gist of it, hasn't it?
I think it was something along the lines of, you know, we're already the Titanic, but now they've gone and burnt all the life rafts. So we've got no way of getting off this ship. I just think the gist of it.
You think we're like Leonardo in the Titanic, George?
I mean, I think I've got the looks. I mean, you know, I'm joking. No, but I think
Kate Winslet.
Hey, Kate Winslet ain't bad. I'd take her on a date.
I wouldn't pay you naked though, George.
I've been asked before. No, I'm joking. But I'm just going. We've talked earlier about Andre Gray selling him at perfect time. We sold him for 18 million, and his career's gone downhill.
And there was uproar with that, wasn't there?
What's that? Sorry,
there was uproar with that too.
There was, totally the same.
Jason Shackle.
My issue is we sold Gray for 80 million, and in that same summer we bought Wood for 50 million. Now we're in a completely different scenario now, in that there's no one in the Championship who's worth our salt, who'd come to us, because Solanke's not going to come. Bournemouth from the up, and Brereton Diaz is obviously not going to be sold to us. So my issue is, who are we going to sign with this with 20, even if it's 25 million, who are we going to sign that's going to replace Wood's normal season goals, which is above 10, and also we need more than that. And we're also in the same market now as Newcastle. In an ideal world, we're signing Trippier when he leaves Madrid, maybe in a couple of years' time, admittedly. And obviously in an ideal world, we're keeping Chris Wood. But now we've got Newcastle, who are our rivals, and they're signing these players. They compare them more. So who are we getting that's going to be good enough that wouldn't be snapped up by another club? Because
I suppose that was an issue anyway, pre-Wood.
It was, but at least we had a striker who'd scored more than 10 goals in the last 3 seasons.
It's heightened it. I think the way Burnley's going to go, I don't personally, again, you might say this, I'll get your view on this, Adam, now. I don't think Burnley's going to go like for Wood. I think they're going to look at it now and use this money and a bit of extra money they've got anyway, because even before we saw Wood, a few reporters have said, there's not loads, but there is money to spend. We've got loads. I think they're going to look at it holistically and look to strengthen the squad as a whole. Thank you, George. I know I'm quite clever sometimes. They're going to look at strengthening the team as a whole. So rather just go, we'll go 20 million for 20 million in a striker. Right, with that money plus any extra money, can we get a two? Can we get a striker? Can we get two or three midfielders? I personally think that's the way they're going to go.
It's the way I'd like them to maybe go. It's probably the perfect time to do it, because what we are doing isn't working. But Dyche hasn't changed in 10 years of management. I'm just a bit sceptical whether he will do halfway through a season. Now, if we brought in Ross Barkley, another midfielder, and a striker, and changed the way we played to 3-5-2, 4-5-1, we'd potentially have a better chance of staying up. But I just can't. I'm sceptical whether he'll do it. I don't think he will do it. I think we are more likely to go like for like, whether that is a bulldozing striker from abroad or Lyndon Dykes, who not scored anywhere near as many goals as I thought he'd had.
I find it really interesting. My stepbrother, who's a United fan, he does have a season ticket. He goes watching them, and he goes week in, week out, to be fair to him. He's not an armchair fan. He's put 20 million plus for 30-year-old Chris Wood. Burnley playing the blinder here. I find it really interesting because, obviously, me being from Wigan, I follow not just a lot of Burnley fans, I love fans from a lot of different teams. And obviously, we know our club more than outsiders know our club. The perception I've read from the outside is that Burnley's playing the blinder from this deal. But fans seem to really disagree. I know, Adam, I just find that the perception really interesting on that. So like I said, my mates who have season tickets, at Wigan, good football people, they're just like, that's an absolute deal for Burnley. He's a donkey every time I watch him.
That's short-sighted thinking, though.
I know it is.
Because I feel like that's on the face of it. You're watching Chris Wood and you're seeing him not do well this season. But the issue is it's the knock-on effect to us, isn't it? That's the real issue. We've got no one ready to step in, and we've got a really big week coming up.
Someone's put this is like winning the lottery for Burnley because Newcastle's bought a static caravan. It's funny that though, isn't it? Yeah, but you got to laugh, George, Go on, Adam. What's your view to that? To these, that's a Liverpool fan who I know. These outside perceptions.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people messaging me the same. Just saying, for the hell, 20 million for Woods, like ridiculous money. And on the face of it, yeah. But I think we go back to the point of what he's worth to us, and what we've got to step in is just not that level. So, we've got a guess.
Has he had his head turned? Though this is a really interesting thing. Has he had his head turned? Yeah. I'm going to come on into that. Natalie, are you here? Can you hear me?
I certainly can. Hello,
Natalie
gentlemen.
comes on at the end and steals all our glory. Natalie's going to come on, say some really interesting, clever monologues when me, George and Adam have made an absolute hash of this podcast. We've not known word to turn. I've been hosting like a blind man, and Natalie's going to come on with a real articulate. Or are we going to have a Bromley bombshell and have a bit of a rant here? Go on, Natalie.
I don't know. Well, this is the problem. I leave you guys alone. I take a week off, hand the podcast over to you guys, and we sell our only decent striker at the club. No, I think it's really difficult actually at the moment to articulate an immediate reaction, because I think all of us are just processing this in our heads at the moment. So I think I probably just feel like a brain dump's probably what I'm going to do. And I think where I've got to in the very short time that I've had to process this since the news broke is, okay, does selling your best striker at the club to a direct relegation rival in the middle of a relegation battle feel like a sensible thing to do? No, it definitely doesn't. Would we have stayed up without selling Chris Wood? Probably not. It does feel a little bit like the writing's on the wall already this season. And as a team, we aren't creating enough opportunities for him to score the goals that we need to score for him to survive. So then you look at that and you think, okay, then you have to kind of process the practicalities and the financial implications of him going. And on paper, taking your heart out of this, you've got to look at it and say, well, 20, 25 million, depending on what reports you're reading, for a 30-year-old striker who's scored 3 goals this season so far is a pretty damn good bit of business. I think there's pros and cons to this whole scenario. And quite frankly, we won't really be able to assess how this feels until the January transfer window's closed. But I think my biggest concern with this just is adding to a general feeling of doom and gloom around the club, and that we're on a free fall down to the Championship and we can't do anything to stop it. I think that's what I'm more concerned about. It's the players aren't performing, it's the results aren't happening, it's the manager not inspiring us at the moment, it's the transfer market being against us, and now selling the only person who's probably going to score us goals to a direct relegation rival. So I think that's where I am, Rich, to be honest. It's really difficult to come out with something particularly articulate and clever when we've literally only had this, and reasonable actually, when we've only had this news for an hour. I think we're always going to be a bit emotional, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. And also on that, Natalie, what we were saying before you came on, what my real worry is here is that in the next week we've got probably the biggest week of the season. I know we said that before, but the more times we don't win a game, we've got the biggest week coming up now. We've got Leicester and Watford, and they are 2 must-win games, because after that, really difficult run of games, and we need to get points on the board. What message does this send to our squad, which are already low on confidence, and we've got the Titanic already, it's already sinking, and we've just chucked all our life rafts off by selling our best, about to sell our best striker on the eve of that big week. They must feel crippled, both the manager, the coaching staff, and
what I would say on this, George, is I disagree with that. I can't, this team's got a lot of character. Chris Wood's done well. One player doesn't make it. I'm going to finish on a bit of a monologue, which I've actually planned before it. My opinion on this is, I'll be absolutely astounded if Dyche hasn't sanctioned this deal. I'd be astounded. And if he's not, he'd be gone by the end of this week. I think he's got that many morals. There's been a lot of rumours, and again, the rumours about Dyche falling out with Wood, or murmurs of Wood being happy and different things like this. This is where I'm really torn being a Burnley fan and having my head and my heart. Chris Wood's going to get a brilliant contract at Newcastle, obviously. But he's still one of the highest earners at Burnley. Burnley give him his chance in the Premier League when no one else wanted him. Dyche and the club have stuck loyal to him when he's had times out of form. And the fans, I'm not buying the fans have been. Burnley have the best fans in the Premier League in terms of sticking with the club and sticking with the players. They may moan a bit on social media, but when it comes to the game, we get behind our lads, and nobody can tell me otherwise. But then Chris Wood, when we're in the, I nearly swallowed, when we're in the mire, he still jumps shit. Never forget that. Never forget. I know it's a lot of money, and people will disagree with me, and I understand that it's a lot of money, and he's still a human being, and football's a job. But Burnley's done a lot. Our club's done a lot for Chris Wood, and he's left at the most important, at the most difficult stage in Burnley's recent history in the last 5 years.
But also is leaving Rich at the time when he's 30 years of age and
exactly
got the last opportunity to make some money for himself and his family before he leaves.
Of course, this is the point, isn't it? But he's on, how much, he's on around 50 odd grand a week.
Yeah, we don't get that because we don't earn that money.
It's not, I don't know, but if he's done this, and this is where it's really difficult, but where's a bit of loyalty to say, you know what, I'll go to Newcastle in the summer where they offer this money. I want to help you lads out. This is what you've done for me. People may criticise Tarky, but Tarky stayed, hasn't he? You know what I mean? Tarky stayed. He could have threw his toys out the pram and just not played. So
I think you've got to bear in mind as well, though, that there's no way on God's. There's no way that this offer is on the table in the summer, though. We talked about this in our group this week. I don't think Newcastle have signed Chris Wood with any intention of playing Chris Wood in the long term. I don't think they've done anything other than directly weaken a relegation rival. All they need to do is get to 7. He won't play a lot of games, but it cripples us. 20 million to Newcastle now is absolutely nothing. They have completely and utterly weakened us. So there's no point Chris Wood waiting to the summer, because in the summer they're either in the Championship and don't need him, or they've got 17th, just done what they needed to do this season, and then can start spending the money on the players that they've got the intention of bringing in once the Saudis took over. Yeah, it was now or never. If for Chris Wood and his family, this was now or never. And we all go to work to make money. Now, footballers are very, very lucky in that they happen to do a job that they love. The rest of us in the real world would rather not work for a living, thanks. We might enjoy our jobs, but generally speaking, it's just a job. So at the end of the day, we all got to work to make money. And I'm going to really struggle to begrudge Chris Wood taking this opportunity at 30 years of age to get a 3-year deal probably from Newcastle at the money they're offering. In
my point of view as well, but let's not cry about it. It happens in football. George, you was going to say something, and I think to Natalie.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I did just want to say, obviously a lot of this podcast we're sort of banging on Chris Wood and stuff, and to be honest, I do begrudge him here because this is scandalous. I just don't know how he's going to turn around to the other teammates and justify this. He really is leaving us in the fire here.
His mates.
And exactly, his mates. And the thing is, we've been talking about money. So in a year for Burnley on 50 grand a week, he makes 2.5 million. I'm not having this, that, he really needs to move for money. And I get that it's last big contract, but it's not really what I wanted to say. I just wanted to put that out there that I'm not happy with Wood. But what I will say is, if he does go this week, and obviously we might talk about it on the podcast next week, but if I'm not on or whatever, I want to say, before he does obviously go, Chris Wood will always have a special place in my heart, because all the team that got into Europe will do, and especially Wood, just because obviously we went to Aberdeen in the summer, the first round, but it wasn't a proper European game. It was brilliant and all, but we wanted to go on to the continent. Our first goal on the continent since since in 51 years was scored by Wood, you know, at Olympiacos when he netted that penalty. I've never celebrated a goal as much as that penalty to score away at Olympiacos, a massive bastion of European football such as them. And, you know, and at the time it levelled us to 1-1. It was just such a special moment for the club. And, you know, all the chants started after that. Burnley are back, hello, you know, and it was just brilliant. And it was such a special time. And he was the striker who not only pushed us into Europe through that season, but netted that goal away at Olympiacos. So if he does go, I really do begrudge him, but he'll always, you know, hold a special place for that. So I think it's worth saying that before, you know, because obviously we've buried on him a bit today.
No, well said, George. Well said. Adam, do you want to have any kind of final views? You look.
I don't think I can beat anything that you guys have just said there. So it's a good place to finish. I think that from George.
Cheers, George. I'm just going to finish it on. Listen, it's not been a good evening. We've lost a player who's, he's faded a little, but George said it brilliantly then. He's given us some fantastic memories. That every single player in that squad and that team who got us to Europe and played in Europe will forever be recognised in Burnley folklore for years to come. You know, I'm 28 now. Will I get to see Burnley in Europe again? There's a good chance I won't, but I can always say that I have done. And, you know, and Chris Will played a huge part in that. You know, we were talking off me and George about his performance away at West Ham when he was fantastic. But what I will say, Burnley fans, is this isn't the end. We've always sold players and we've come back. Going from my time of watching Burnley, we sold Robbie Blake. I was heartbroken. We sold Kyle Lafferty. It seemed to be end of the world, and we got promoted that season. We sold Charlie Austin on the eve of the season, and people thought we was going to get relegated. We got promoted. We sold Danny Ings, and people were thinking, where are we going to go here? We signed Andre Gray, and we got back promoted. We got relegated. We sold Jason Shackle to one of our promotion rivals, but we signed Michael Keane, and we was fine. We sold Michael Keane that first season. We stayed up, and James Tarkowski's come in, and we was fine. We sold Andre Gray to 18 million for Watford, and all of a sudden we're going down. We've only got Sam Vokes up front. We come in Europe. Burnley are at the best when we're a wounded animal. We've been stale, we've been sloppy, we've been sleepwalking for 18 months now. Maybe this is the time, maybe this is the thing that's going to get Burnley back on track, back being the determined selves of winning every ball. It could be a disaster, but we've got to keep getting behind the lads. We've got 2 massive games at home to Turf Moor. I'm going to be there. I know, the No Nay Never podcast will be there. We'll be cheering on the lads. And, you know, it's been tough this season. It's been difficult, but this is a time where we need to get behind the team, get behind the manager, and get behind those players who's given a lot for Burnley. Just want to say what an interesting podcast it's been. It's been challenging at times, but ultimately, I just want to say thank you to the listeners. Hope, you know, who's listened into it. We wasn't going to do a podcast this week. But yeah, I think we got some interesting content out. You know, and listen, let's hope for some positive news in the next few days, and you know, and fingers crossed, a couple of wins. So I just want to say thanks to Adam, George, and thanks for Natalie for coming on at the end and being the voice of reason. I've been Richard Steele, and this has been your No Nay Never podcast.